So today we are starting section 4, or actually it's continuing section 4.4 because we technically started it on Friday. We've talked already about some of our vocab from last week, such as factoring, a vocab word here. Factoring is rewriting an expression as a product of its factors. Now that is done in all math jargon. Product means multiplication. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we are rewriting an expression as then a multiplication problem. We're breaking it into 2 or 3 or more things multiplied together that will give us that original item we started with, that original expression. Okay, so that's factoring. Last week we dealt with factoring out the GCF to different polynomials, and we also dealt with factoring polynomials with 4 terms, and we did that by grouping. Okay? Today we're going to focus on trinomials. Trinomials have 3 terms. Trinomials are always written in the form, or can always be written in the form, ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are just real numbers. And then of course x is our variable. Okay? So that's how we'll see trinomials. Anybody in here remember the term FOIL from Algebra 1? F-O-I-L, FOIL, stands for outside, inside, last, right? And it's how you, first, outside, inside, last. I forgot the F part. Okay. So, first, outside, inside, last. And what that's doing for us is it gives us a structure for multiplying binomials. 2 binomials together. For example, right here they explain FOIL. So we have 2 binomials, x plus 4 times x plus 2, and then they're multiplying the first terms, which are the x's, the outside term, x times 2, the inside term, 4 times x, and then the last term, 4 times 2. Okay? If you've never heard that word FOIL, or maybe you just don't remember it, another way of talking about this is double distribution, which essentially means take the x and then distribute it times the x and then times the 2. Which essentially, that's all we're doing when we multiply the first and we multiply the outside. Okay? And then we take the 4, we multiply that by the x, and we multiply that by the 2. Which again, is exactly what we're doing when we multiply the inside and the last terms. So it's the same thing, it's just 2 different phrases for talking about it. Either FOIL or double distribution. When you multiply those together, you end up getting this. X times x plus x times 2 plus 4 times x plus 4 times 2. So this is x squared plus 2x plus 4x plus 8, right? Well, before we call that done when we're multiplying, we have to combine our like terms. We have 2x plus 4x, which is 6x. Okay? Now the reason I'm taking you guys through this is because today we're factoring a trinomial. We are then going to be learning to take this trinomial and break it apart and rewrite it as those 2 binomials. Okay? So that's the process we're going to be doing today. Let's take a look at our first example. Example A, off to the side here. All right. So example A, we have x squared plus 9x plus 20. And remember that trinomials are written in this form, ax squared plus bx plus c. So if I ask you what's the a in this this expression, you should be telling me 1, because there's 1x squared. That's the number out in front of the x squared. If I say what's the b, your answer is 9. What's the c? 20. Okay, so we first, just like always, want to see, can we factor out a GCF? No, can't do that. So then our next step is to factor this using what we call the X method. Okay? So the X method literally means off to the side you draw an X. All right? First thing we do in the X method is we take the A times the C and we write that on top. So we're taking 1 times 20. We write it on top. Then we take whatever our B term is, and we write it on the bottom of the X. So B goes down here. Okay? Well, now what we're doing Now what we're looking for are two numbers that when we multiply them give us 20, but when we add them give us 9. 5 and 4. Okay. 5 and 4. So we write those here and there. Doesn't matter which order you put those in, by the way. You can write 4 and 5. That's fine. Okay? But now, what these numbers do for us, those are the two numbers that we're going to use to break apart that middle term. Okay, because remember what we had back here? If I quickly go back to that example. Remember we had to combine like terms here to get that middle term when we FOIL? Well, right now we're breaking that apart. But we got to be careful how we break it apart. We have to use certain numbers to break it apart. And those certain numbers are the 5 and the 4. Okay? So when we break that apart now, we rewrite this as x squared plus 5x plus 4x plus 20. We have taken that middle term and we have broken it apart into 5x and 4x. Okay? Where did I get the 5 and the 4? From the 9 and the 20, right? The two numbers that multiply to give me 20, but add together to give me 9. That's where I got the 5 and the 4. Okay. Well, that right there is the new thing. Because everything else is now what we did on Friday. We have 4 terms in our polynomial. So how are we going to factor this? What's the phrase? What's the process? Grouping. It starts with a G, yep. Grouping. We factor this by grouping. So I group the first two together. I group the second two together. In my first group, I can factor out an x. Leaves me with x plus 5. In the second group, I can factor out a 4. Leaves me with x plus 20. X plus 20, no. X plus 5. Because when you take a factor out, you've got to factor it out of both of those terms, right? You just can't take the 4 out from the 4x. You've also got to take the 4 out from the 20. All right, so this is x plus 5, which we can now factor the x plus 5 out in front.